Hi everyone, how's it going? Following the previous video, which received quite a warm reception, it seems like people are interested in me making longer videos and in this two-part format. So I'm going to do it again. This time, this Prelude and Scherzo will be in two parts, the first of which will be talking about theory crafting, but in terms of game design. Why click gaining can arguably be a negative player experience. This should be quite interesting. Following that, we'll talk about tactics against DLR Max. Now, this seems very stark a contrast, but trust me, there will be a connection to it that we'll see in a moment. But first, let's move to part 1. And negative player experiences. To talk about NPEs, we first have to ask ourselves what makes the game fun in the first place. Now, we can go on a debate for this forever, and I won't delve into it. But in short, I'd like to highlight a couple of points. This game is fun because of the run mechanic, very unique to the game. And when I say runs, I don't just mean running lots of naked servers against an acid spam deck. What I mean is making runs against meaningful ice servers and having to break them with icebreakers. The icebreaker interaction, that's what's unique, as well as the ebb and flow of the game. When you score an agenda, you take a tempo hit. When you steal an agenda, you have to break ice, and that means you lose resources as well. These are the fundamental mechanics that make the game fun because it turns into a tug of war game where one side gains an advantage but loses leverage, and the other side can pull the rope back to their side, and so on and so forth. This heightens the tension of the game, and this is what makes it fun. The click mechanic is pretty unique to Netrunner as well. The fact that the corp has 3 clicks followed by the runner having 4 clicks and this alternating means that both sides get their turn to tug at the rope, and this provides a very dynamic interplay. A runner would play very differently when the corp's at 0 points compared to 5 points. So yeah, scoring agendas is important, and the problem with one-turn combo decks is that it just takes away everything that I just said. No longer is there the icebreaker interaction for the most part, because most of the ice is either rendered invalid or serve as gear checks. Runs are typically not made until the combo turn, and then you have things like the combo turn being mostly a puzzle which one side solves solitaire style. This means that there's no interaction, very little interaction with the opponent at all. And this is quite bad because when you cut off the 2-player interaction, there's no more tug of war game. You can't play tug of war with only one player. So yeah, this is the problem with one-turn combo decks. It is negative player experience for the other player who is on the receiving end of the combo, because they just have to sit, watch, and wait for them to lose. Taking away the agency from one player, taking away the ability for one player to use clicks, that's not fun. And what are the culprits of that? It's none other than CI7 and Diaper, both of which have surged in popularity in the past few months. So everyone has missed theory crafting of the root of the problem for these decks, and there are many ways you can attack it, but after a lot of thinking, what I realized is that the problem with these decks is not so much cards like DDoS, but more so the cards that enable the click gaining in the first place, Accelerated Diagnostics and Hyperdriver. So yeah, click gaining is a problem because, as mentioned earlier, when someone starts hoarding all the clicks, then they get to play the solitaire game, and the opponent cannot do anything about it because they don't have clicks of their own to use. When the corp has 3 clicks and the runner has 4 clicks, it's fine because, if the corp does something with their 3 clicks, the runner can retaliate and the corp can make counterplays to that as well. But this is a lot less possible when someone is holding all the clicks. You are left with paid ability windows to defend yourself, and that's a lot less fun. So now, since we are talking about game design, let's look at some other click gaining cards in card pool and why they are not as oppressive as Diagnostics or Hyperdriver. So when you design click gaining cards, there are a few things you have to bear in mind. They are fine if they are limit once per turn. Cards like Autoscriptor and Adjusted Chronotype are fine because they only trigger once per turn, so you cannot hoard many clicks that way in a single turn. You might gain infinite clicks over an infinite number of turns because you trigger it every single turn, gaining you a click every turn, but that's over an infinite horizon, and this doesn't contribute to a one big combo turn, shall I say. So these cards are fine. Another way to make cards fine is to make them unique. That way they cannot stack and they cannot provide you more than one click. Jeeves is a very good example of this. You cannot gain more than one click from Jeeves no matter how hard you try. Next up, we have cards that are just, their numbers are just too expensive, such that you cannot spam them to create a big combo turn. While Biotic Labor is used in the CI combo, by itself, Biotic Labor is very expensive. You're trading 4 credits for a click. This is really, really expensive. And there are only 3 copies of Biotic Labor in your deck. If you want to play more Biotic Labors, you have to find some way to recur them, and that increases the overhead cost. So you cannot create a big combo turn out of Biotic Labor alone. On the runner side, we have cards like Amped Up, which have similarly prohibitive costs. Amped Up gives you 2 clicks, but at the cost of a brain damage. Now, this brain damage might seem innocuous at first, but actually it is a very powerful control mechanic in the sense that it limits the ability for you to make a combo turn with Amped Up, and that's pretty good. This is very good design. Firstly, brain damage lowers your max hand size. So if your max hand size goes down to less than 0, you're in trouble. You lose the game. So you cannot play that many Amped Ups in a single game. That's the limit right there. And secondly, the random nature of brain damage means that it is possible that your combo pieces will end up being sniped from your hand as you play more Amped Ups. So this is a very good balancing mechanic. You can try to play combos with Amped Up, but if your combo pieces themselves get hit, you're losing combo pieces and that disrupts your combo. So this is what prevents Amped Up from being overly powerful. And at the end of the day, I think the most important metric here is the power level of the cards, the potential click gain that a card can give you in a single turn. Most of the cards that we have seen so far give you only 1 extra click per turn. Amped Up gives you 2 extra clicks. But what about Accelerated Diagnostics and Hyperdriver? Well, Hyperdriver is pretty clear. You spend 1 click to install it, that's fine, but on your combo turn, for every Hyperdriver you pop, you gain 3 clicks. That's insane. Very quickly, a couple of Hyperdrivers can already bring you up to the likes of 10 clicks, which is rather enough to start doing some insane combos. So this is why Hyperdriver is a problem card. The DDoS False Echo combo wouldn't be half as nasty if the runner only had several clicks to capitalize on it. But with Hyperdriver giving you in excess of double-digit clicks, yeah, that's a big problem. And that's mostly because a single Hyperdriver, one single card, can give you 3 clicks in one fell swoop. And it's not unique, so you can stack those Hyperdrivers. What Accelerated Diagnostics? This one's an interesting one because there's no mention of the word click in the card at all. Yet, it is the fundamental problem when it comes to co-op side gaining clicks. Let's analyze how many clicks a single Accelerated Diagnostics can save. Now, let's assume you play a Diagnostics and it only triggers a single card, Biotic Labor. Well, that's not very efficient, is it? It's basically the same as playing the Biotic Labor from your hand, except that you are losing 1 credit from playing the Diagnostics. That's not a very good way to use Diagnostics, but that's our baseline. We spend a click to play another operation, in this case Biotic Labor. But what if your Diagnostics hits not 1, but 3 cards? Your Diagnostics hits interns and shipment in addition to Biotic. Now you start saving a lot of clicks because Diagnostics allows you to play all these 3 cards for just 1 click. This means that after playing the Biotic Labor, you're now net neutral in clicks, but then you save 1 click from playing interns and 1 click from playing shipment, as both of them are operations and you have to pay a click to play them otherwise. However, because these 2 new operations are also doubles, as an additional cost to play them, you have to spend a click, and that is negated by Diagnostics. So suddenly, you're saving not just 2, but 4 clicks, 4 whole clicks. That's insane. 1 card, 1 credit saves you 4 clicks. This is where CI7 generates its extra clicks from. Every time they play an Accelerated Diagnostics, they're accelerating their gameplay by so much. And this is why this is kind of a broken combo, because it allows CI7 to perform maybe 12 plus clicks worth of actions in a single turn without any way for the runner to retaliate with their clicks. So, yep. So that's my analysis, and this is why CI has such a bad rap, because of the ability to combo with accelerated diagnostics. But it's quite unfortunate, isn't it? Because it's not really CI's fault. It clearly is accelerated diagnostics' fault for being able to gain the co-op so many clicks. This gains CI7 a very bad rep, which it really shouldn't have. And I want to play a CI deck that doesn't abuse diagnostics. No diagnostics at all. This is CI. I'm just using it because CI is a very interesting ID. You can do lots of interesting stuff with it. And what I'm about to do here is something very unconventional. I'm going to play Rig Shooter CI. With Rig Shooter CI, I'm going to make a remote with end runs and I'm going to score agendas in them. Crazy, right? I know. The main highlight of this deck is the Rig Shooter package in the form of power shutdowns and arc lockdowns. With this, I can aggressively power shut down my opponent's breakers and send them into the bin and lock them out if they are conspiracy breakers. To ensure that I don't mill my agendas when I power shut down, form of Jackson Howard and preemptive action. With so many copies of them, I can be sure to recycle my agendas should they be milled by power shutdown. More end run ice, a couple of taxing ice for centrals, but mostly end runs to keep the runner out and gear check them to oblivion. Because I'm CI and there's a lot of hate against CI. The worst kind of hate is credit denial. Siphon and Femme are cards you do not want to see, and so you do want to spend influence to protect against that. Let's see how this deck plays out against DLR Max. Once upon a time, some punk decided to bring DLR Max to Worlds 2016 and did pretty well with it. Well, guess what? He is now taking a sip of his own bitter medicine. What can I say? Karma, baby. Alright, so we begin, and this is definitely not a good matchup for CI, because being siphoned down is really bad. But I do start with Turing and Eli, so the first thing you always do against DLR Max is to double ice HQ. No questions asked. If you have two ice, they are both going on HQ. Against other sorts of siphon decks, we are thinking of Siphon Keyhole Wiz, or maybe En Person Valencia. You can typically afford to leave a single ice on HQ for at least the first 1 or 2 turns, because either the deck does not have DDoS, or even if it does not have the consistency to see DDoS siphon very early on in their first turn. Whereas with Max, you get access to as many as 8 cards at the very start of your first click because of Max's ability. Another important factor is that Max does not have any sort of R&D pressure whatsoever, so you are not expecting a keyhole or medium, you don't need to defend against it. In fact, I would dedicate my third piece of ice on HQ before I even consider icing R&D or archives. Now my opponent installs DDoS here, and that is a big red flag. This carries the risk of my opponent just blind siphoning click 1 next turn, and I cannot have that. Therefore, I need the third piece of ice. So now my HQ is Eli, Turing. Sooner or later, my opponent will have to siphon past all 3 ice, and it will be super taxing. That's 4 for each Eli, and 3 clicks for Turing. It's not going to be a worthy siphon. So once I have my siphon protection all set and ready to go, I can now think of actually advancing my game plan, which is to set up an end run remote, which I specifically kept the next bronze in hand for. The next bronze is going to be the base of my remote server, and after I put the second piece of ice on it, I can begin scoring out. I do want to finish this game as quickly as possible because DLR mill is not good for me. Now, contrary to intuition, you don't actually want to mill out CI as DLR. As DLR, you want to siphon down CI, because if you mill them, you're helping them win. But this applies only to typical combo CI7, which I mentioned earlier is the degenerate deck we were talking about. For my CI, we are playing very much proper Netrunner for the most part. Therefore, I actually do not fancy getting milled out at all. So if my opponent gets a DLR out, I need to try to contest it. Here, I slot a Jackson in the scoring remote. I would slot an agenda here, but I'm too poor right now. I would have loved to draw some economy, but I haven't seen hedge funds, haven't seen violet level. Those are the 2 big economy cards along with restructure that I really need to start starting my gameplay. The problem is, if my opponent blind siphons right now, I'm not in a good place. I'll be forced to res like 7 credits worth of ice, and that is detrimental to my gameplay. because it lowers my hand size. So this is actually not a good situation for me. This is why I wanted to get the Jackson down. It either forces the DDoS from my opponent, forcing them to pop it just to access my remote, or it forces them to concede the Jackson Howard, at which point I can start hyperdrawing with it. I really wanted to see a violet level here, or a hedge fund. I did not. All I saw was a bunch of ice, archive mems, and a blue level. So I was forced to ditch one card actually. It's not that bad. Okay. So my opponent has prepared Ether in the last turn. Again, you can see how Max is developing the board state, and from there you can infer what they're going to do next. I think it's quite clear that my opponent is going to set up for an account siphon at this point. They know that's the thing they need to do. For those of you wondering, why isn't my opponent running the naked R&D? Well, it's not their fault. My opponent does not know that I'm on some sort of janky CI as opposed to normal CI combo. You cannot run against combo CI unless you want to lose, because it then turns on power shutdown, and I can easily power shutdown combo. Of course, I don't have accelerated diagnostics in this deck, so yeah, it's a bonkers card. I hate it. It really should be banned, but well, the best I can do is to not play with it myself and to give a positive play experience for my opponents. So as I said, my opponent was setting up for the siphon. You could tell by the Ether install and the gaining of clicks. He wanted credits so that he can break stuff with Ether. He gets through an Eli, but he spends clicks instead of breaking Eli normally, and that was the first fatal mistake from my opponent, because by spending clicks, he was not able to get past the Turing, and this means that the siphon failed. So I'm still rich. Here, I'm going to start my rig shooting plan. I'm playing a power shutdown to kill my opponent's Ether. A very interesting choice, mostly because I have a preemptive action in hand. I can afford to do this. I'm going to shuffle an agenda back in that I milled with power shutdown. So yeah, this is the combo in action. You can afford to be very aggressive with your power shutdowns, because preemptive action and Jackson Howard will be there to save you from milling agendas. This was an idea I ripped off from Rotom Appliance, who plays very frequently on JNet and is a very good player. He did this in Building a Better World, Wayland BW, instead of CI. And there are good cases running it both in HB versus in Wayland. I'm deciding to try the HB route right here. The reason why I'm going for CI instead of ETF is because Violet level just speeds up your game so much, and it is much easier to play Violet level in CI than in ETF. Now, I'm being a very nasty person here. I double ice archives here because I expected that my opponent would try to find another way to get a breaker out now that I've milled the Ether. The best way for them to get a breaker out is to use Retrieval Run. And I expected it to come because my opponent played a DDoS. So that indicates to me that they wanted the DDoS to do something. In this case, it seems like they want to Retrieval Run the Ether or a Femme. So I double ice archives with 2 next bronzers. This means that my opponent cannot get through. Their only other breaker other than Ether and Femme is a paperclip, which they use to get rid of the Eli on HQ, thereby allowing them to siphon away at me. So that was not good. I actually considered a siphon there, which is really bad because that gives my opponents tags for DLR and also makes me poorer. It kind of resets my tempo, so this was not good for me. You notice I have a lot of siphon hate cards in my bin. I really should be using archive mems for it. And here you see me block the Retrieval Run that I was preparing for. So it's actually quite important to stay one step ahead of your opponent. You know that Retrieval Run's a very key card in DLR Max to recur programs. Without Retrieval Run, my opponent is forced to use Deja Vu to recur Ether or the like they're doing right now. Oh no, they're using it for siphon instead. So this is a nasty situation. I know my opponent has siphon in hand. They can actually siphon through my HQ. It's Eli Turing. I was agonizing over this. There was no good way for me to defend against it. I really wanted to play the restructure that I just drew, but if I do go credit restructure, I'm just liable to get siphoned down again. That was not an option. Then I realized I did have the 2 hate cards for siphon in my bin. It's time to get them out. I'm going to add Sealed Vault to my hand. Sealed Vault is nice because it doesn't telegraph a siphon defense in the way Crystal Grid does. And moreover, it was face down, so my opponent didn't actually know that I recurred a Sealed Vault. My opponent goes for the siphon as expected, and it's going to spend 6 credits and 3 clicks just to get all the way to the base of my server, only to have me thwart their plans at the very last second. Sealed Vault! Oh, so good, so good. Okay. Now my opponent's forced to access, and he calls me the literal devil. Oh, I feel so bad for him, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Siphon is a big problem against CI, and you want to have all the defense against it. Now, I click for 2 credits, and then I use the click ability of Sealed Vault. You don't want to use a trash ability unless you must, because this allows you to preserve the Sealed Vault, forcing your opponent to spend 8 credits to trash it. Now, normally Max doesn't have a problem with trashing assets because they run 3 Scrubbers. Scrubbers is a very important card against asset spam, but because I'm CI, my opponent didn't really bother to install Scrubber, at least not until this point. Now they're forced to play the Scrubber just to get rid of the Sealed Vault, because if they don't, I'll just get rich and they can't win. So the levy comes down, and that's really sad because I do have an Arc Lockdown somewhere in my deck, and using Arc Lockdown to ban Eater or Count Siphon would basically just win me the game. Unfortunately, I didn't draw my one-off Arc Lockdown, so the next best thing I can do here is to keep control of the DLR. One thing that my opponent doesn't really know still is that I'm really afraid of DLR. That is my opponent's best win condition. If they start mashing DLR every turn, I'm not going to win. So I need to control my opponent's resource rig. Unfortunately, they find a wireless net pavilion and a fall guy in succession right after the levy. So this is a very painful sight to watch for me. Without any economy cards in my hand, I cannot spend 8 credits trashing fall guy WNP. That would leave me down to 1 credit, and I would be forced to discard. So the next best thing I can do is to play the only economy card from my hand, Sales Team. Corporate Sales Team was the only thing in my hand that generated money, so I'm going to double ice the remote and start advancing the Sales Team. There's nothing my opponent can do about this. They have no breakers, so I'm gonna let them hit the next bronze to end the run. So this is one of Max's big Achilles heels. If you have a double ice remote with a hard end the run code gate or sentry at the end of it, there's nothing your opponent can do against it. So this is a free Sales Team for me, but at some cost, because this also brings me down to 2 credits. I'm forced to ditch my entire hand. Now, I don't feel so bad about this because of my preemptive icing of archives earlier. I don't have to worry about chucking all these agendas into archives. I know my opponent can't get through archives right now. The only way they're going to get an access on archives is if they Femme the next bronze, which they won't because they don't have enough money. My opponent's too poor to play Femme. So I'm safe for now, and I can get up to VLC money next turn. And that should salvage me. I'll be able to install Jackson and relieve the agenda flood on archives. In the meantime, my opponent suffers a huge tempo hit, being forced to trash the Sealed Vault. That's a victory for me. The fact that I managed to force my opponent to spend 2 clicks to install 2 Scrubbers just to trash the Sealed Vault, I'm winning already. I'm winning in life. Now I finally draw all my economy cards, and this is where things start looking better for me. I have a Jackson in my remote, so I'm not very worried about archives flood. And my opponent's on 0 credits, so they are basically forced to spend the next few turns clicking up for credits. And this is where you want to leave Max. DLR Max is actually notoriously poor. If they are not able to get siphons off, they are actually in a very bad place. So the next best thing my opponent can do, they're doing the exact right thing here, is to DLR me. I'm down to 8 cards in my deck. I do have a Jackson Howard to save me, but it won't last very long. So I'm purely focused on destroying my opponent's resource rig. Fall guy comes out. Oh, this is going to be so annoying. And DLR keeps coming. I'm down to 4 cards in my deck. I'm going to trash the wireless net pavilion here. My opponent makes a very crucial error. They should protect the wireless net from the fall guy. I think my opponent was saving it because they wanted to protect the data leak reversal instead. But this just makes it cheaper for me to trash everything. It's quite even there. It's quite hard to say. In any case, I get rid of the entire resource rig and I'm down to 10 credits. Don't forget, I still actually need to win the game. Even if I deny my opponent's win condition of DLR, I'm still gonna lose if I deck myself out. So I need to find a way to score the last 5 points without decking myself out or exposing too many agendas in R&D. So oddly enough, this is such an awkward situation. It almost never comes up, but actually, the best place for my agendas to be right now are both in hand and in archives. That's where the most end run eyes are. That's where my opponent cannot have any access to. I know archives is completely safe because my opponent doesn't have a decoder and only has 1 Femme. Double next bronze will seal the deal. So I do not want agendas in R&D because if my opponent starts running there, I'm going to lose. In the meantime, I'm going to score my 4th point with ABT, obviously not triggering. So, how am I going to score the last global food? This is going to be quite tricky because the eyes on my remote is next silver into bronze. It looks secure on first glance, but because my opponent has DDoS or paperclip and a Femme, I cannot safely advance an agenda behind the bronze because now my opponent's up to 9 credits. They have Femme access, they can Femme the bronze and run it to steal my agenda, setting me back a large amount. And I cannot afford to be set back right now because I'm getting decked out really quickly. So I'm looking at this, I'm going, I could try to score two 3-pointers, two 3-2 agendas, the 2 ABTs, but that's very slow. And my opponent will probably Femme the remote anyway. Doesn't seem like a good idea. I need some way to protect the remote. Cobra, Snake on remote is not going to help either because Snake is breakable by Femme. My opponent just needs to Femme the bronze, they can break the Cobra on the outside. So that's not an option either. I'm going to bait my opponent into running this Jackson by installing it and then drawing out with VLC. This VLC trigger was very, very controversial. So many things could go wrong with this. I'm decking myself now down to 1 card in R&D, and that's crazy, crazy territory to be in. Yeah, this is going balls deep, should I say. I did this because I really needed the economy, and I needed to draw cards like Jackson Howard and Preemptive Action. I completely forgot about Icon Siphon. I forgot that my opponent could do such a thing. Thankfully, I got money from VLC, so it's not that painful a hit, but this definitely does slow me down. So now I have 1 card in deck. I know it is my last Preemptive Action from calculations. I'm going to analyze my bin here and I decide, okay, what do I need now? I need money because the Siphon train is going to come in and I need money to score out this global food somehow. So, I know I need to score global food and I need to somehow get rid of my opponent's Femme Fatale. So thinking about it here, it just made more sense that I needed to recur money. Again, I'm not concerned with the agendas in the bin. I know my opponent can't get there. It's the money that I need. So being on 8 credits, I decided to shuffle in 3 hedge funds. That way, I will have a very high chance of top decking a hedge fund, which will allow me to go up to more than 10 credits. But I draw the Preemptive Action instead. All the other 3 cards in my deck are hedge funds. Okay. So I still don't win here. I still am not safe with dropping a global food here. The only next best thing I can do is the Preemptive Action for Biotic Labor, which will allow me to fast advance a 3-2 or something. And more money. At this point, I just need more money. I'm really not sure about this line of play, but I'm just going to take it. And then my opponent max mills a Femme. Then the mills from Max put Femme in the bin. And that's where my eyes lit up. I was like, okay, Femme is in the bin. If my opponent doesn't rescue their Femme, it's going to get arc knocked down and my remote will be 100% secure. Will my opponent get Femme off the bin? I play a gamble. 2 more clicks left. What will they do? What's their priority? Are they gonna run? Are they gonna install? Are they gonna play Deja Vu? Tough to say. I'm looking at a bin very anxiously. They have 2 Deja Vus in the bin. That's the only way to get stuff back. Eaters could be anywhere. They could install Eater from the hand. They could go for Retrieval Run. There's so many things my opponent could do. What's the right play right here? Tough to tell. All I know is that's my win condition right there. Scoring the last points are going to be so difficult. Eater comes down. Oh dear. My worst fear is coming true. They could Retrieval Run. Nope, they drop the same old thing. I'm good to go. I can arc knock down the Femme. But wait, my opponent takes it back. Takes it back, sis. 1 click. What are they going to do with their click? Oh no, they're going to Deja Vu. They got the Femme back in there. Oh, they got the account siphon. Okay, well, okay. I guess that's game then. I'm going to arc lock down the Femme and I drop the food in the remote. Whew. Wow. Thank goodness for that. Okay, so my worst fear is over and my food is safe in the remote. All I need to do to run away with the game is to score the food before I deck myself out. I'm still concerned that my opponent has the opportunity to DLR me. So this is why I was very conscientious with dismantling my opponent's resource rig. I know this deck is supposed to exhibit power shutdown on programs combo, but in this game, dismantling my opponent's resource rig was more important. I needed to deny them from spamming the win button in DLR, And thankfully I did that. Even if they somehow manage to get DLR reinstalled here, they won't have enough clicks to mill me out before I can respond with either Jackson Howard or an ice on R&D. So this is actually quite important. I will not lose unless I'm very careless at this point. Meanwhile, my opponent thinks of their best line of play. With all 3 DLRs in the bin, there's very little they can do at this point. A siphon will not cripple me because I'm too rich. All I need is 5 credits to score the food to win. All I need to do is to ensure that I don't accidentally deck myself by playing Violet level at this point. That's really silly. So this win was mostly off the back of knowledge. Knowledge is certainly power. I knew my opponent's deck basically card for card, so I was able to defend properly. Knowing that my opponent doesn't have any outs against Nyx Bronze is such a huge deal. Not being able to access any cards behind the Nyx Bronze allows me to protect archives and the remote very well. On the other hand, my opponent didn't really know about my deck, so yeah, they didn't really run R&D, even though it was left open the entire game. They thought I could combo out if they even made a run, and that clearly wasn't the case. So yeah, back to what I said a couple of videos ago. Nowadays, the element of surprise is very important for anyone playing Corp. Your chances of winning are much better if your opponent's deck is a known quantity. That's for sure. Now that was a nice victory against DLR. We managed to dismantle their resource rig so that they couldn't mill us. However, is this the way to go in most games? Actually, that is not the case. I strongly believe that most decks cannot actually contest the DLR engine. One way to do this is you take your Corp deck and you compare it against mine, the economy engine. I have 12 economy cards, and all of them are very bursty in nature. You spend 1 click or 2 in the case of blue level, and you get at least 3 credits out of them. And the hedge funds and restructures especially add so much money. Can your deck do this? The answer is probably not, because you usually don't overcompensate for economy. You have just enough economy for what you need to raise your eyes, to get your assets going, to play side games or ash tracers. That's about it. The reason why CI can compete against the economy war, where most other decks fail, is because CI typically overcompensates for economy because they need to defend against Siphon. Without extra economy, if their credit pool goes too low, they will lose straight up to Siphon and Femme decks. This is why they need a strong economy engine. Unless your economy engine is something along the lines of Acid Spam or Breaker Bay, Grid, Eve, and Adonis campaign, chances are you don't actually have enough money to contest the DLR engine, and you should not. Many people make the mistake of half-heartedly contesting the Data Lake reversal only to find that they are too poor to do so while getting siphoned and milled out. So if you can't contest it, don't. Instead, what you should do is to try to win. If you're not contesting the engine, take it as a race against a ticking time bomb. First off, you have to defend HQ aggressively. As you saw me, double ice HQ early on and add a 3rd piece of ice before I even iced up any other servers for the first time. If you keep max poor, if they are not able to gain money off siphons, they'll be forced to click for credits a lot, and this gives you the breeding room you need to set up your scoring remote. At the same time, do not ignore a defended remote. If you are running campaigns, this is a very important thing to have. If you have a safe Adonis or a safe Eve campaign, that is your win condition in itself, because this gives you the money you need to either score out or to trash the resource rig. Otherwise, if your win condition is something like Psychographics or Boom, play to that. Try to get the just try to kill them, try to kill the paparazzis in the way, or just try to get enough money to Psychographics and build out. If your only win condition is getting 7 agenda points, well, rush for it. Hopefully you have some end run ice that actually you can actually score behind, like I did this game. The single Nyx Bronze carried me my 7 agenda points. Lastly, don't forget to preempt Max's vectors of attack. This is typically quite difficult because Max typically moves faster than you, but if you can, defend against the Retrieval Runs, those can be huge and game-changing. Obviously, keep on top of the siphons, and take note of how many agendas have been milled. Sometimes you need the Jackson Howards to save that. And sometimes, as with this game, you have to realize that the agendas might be safer in archives than R&D, so play towards that. All in all, if you know the DLR Max deck at the back of your palm like I do, it shouldn't be too difficult to actually play optimally. At that point, it's a question of whether you who gets the better draw, and whether you can consistently stay on top of the account siphons as I did. Well, hopefully you learn a thing or two about playing against DLR. It's not the best deck to play against, it's not the most fun, but once you actually do know what you're doing, it can be quite an interesting tussle, as in this game where I nearly decked myself, but I was able to pull out the 7 agenda points win at the end of the day. Thanks for watching, and happy net running. Goodbye.